Market trends are going to change over time. They are going to be different in year 10 than they were in year 1. So those trends are going to change over time, and sometimes that necessitates, that you have to change.
I can see the whole wide world with these two eyes, and I can be whoever I want to be, 'cause it's my life.
Hi, thanks for tuning in again for another episode of Ask Spurrell CPA. Today, as the Edmonton business coach, we're talking about business plan market trends section. I have Laura here with me today. Laura, you're learning a bit about business plans?
Yeah.
Did they have a business plan section at, you went to Nate, right?
McEwen.
You're at McEwen. So did they have a business plan module or chapter in one of the books that it covered?
Not that I recall, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, that's usually the answer I get from most undergrads is they had like one chapter in one book that dealt with business plans or not. Even though business plans are 50% more likely to solve the number one problem in business. But the quote that we have here today, it's a Benjamin Franklin quote, one of the founding fathers of the United States. He says, "If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail." And Palo Alto has run the numbers on it, and they say, just like I said, businesses who complete a plan are 50% more likely to grow their revenue than those who do not. And revenue growth is usually the number one problem in any business. And the story that we have here are new entrepreneurs. They get too focused on what type of work they want to do rather than the type of product and service that the market wants. And even experienced owners, they forget that what the customer wants, it changes over time. Those trends are going to change over time, and you need to change with those times because it's not about what you want to do. It's about what the customer is going to buy ultimately. So Laura, what are the questions that these business owners should be asking?
Do you look at the market trends in the market and risk section of the business plan?
Yeah, so normally I have a whole section that deals with the market and risk section of the business plan, and the first part of that section is going to be the market trends. That's where I find it the most helpful.
Is this different than the target market section in the executive summary?
Yeah, so people think market and risk. The target market, normally that target market is so important that I'm putting that right up there in the executive summary. Let's say you're targeting homeowners in the metropolitan area that you live in, or your quadrant of the city that you live in. That target market, that's different, right? You might even go deeper into that target market, and you're targeting female homeowners between the ages of 30 and 55 with income levels of greater than $100,000 in the northwest quadrant of your city. That's the target market section. It's different than this market and risk section where start talking about the trends first of all.
Will trends change over time?
Almost all the time. Market trends are going to change over time. They are going to be different in year 10 than they were in year 1. So those trends are going to change over time, and sometimes that necessitates, that you have to change.
Will some trends provide opportunities?
Yeah, so some trends aren't necessarily a bad thing. People think about trends and there's a slowdown and I'm getting replaced by technology or something like this, but a lot of the trends present opportunities. There's things that the market is crying out for and they can't get enough of it. So there's a lot of opportunities to be had by studying the trends within your industry.
Will some trends provide challenges?
Yeah, so the challenges are the big one too. People normally move out of fear, unfortunately not from the opportunity, but within the trends there's going to be both opportunities and there's going to be challenges, and we've got to be realistic about both of those.
Should plans identify multiple trends, including both positive and negative ones?
Yeah, so here's the thing. A lot of people will come and they've identified some trends in the industry somewhere, maybe not in the same section that I like to do, but a lot of times they haven't gone deep enough to say, hey, these are the specific trends in my industry that that are creating a big opportunity. Usually they put those in there. This is the opportunity. This is the niche that I'm filling. But they don't say that these are also the trends in my industry that are making it harder to do business in my industry, creating more risks in my industry. And an effective business plan, it's going to give both the positive and the negative Trends. I think you're really doing a disservice by only identifying the positive trends in the industry or the negative trends in the industry. You need to identify multiple trends in the industry. And if you have an honest discussion about those multiple trends in your industry, you're going to uncover, positive ones that provide for opportunities and negative ones that pose challenges on doing business.
Does technological advancement normally create trends in everyday industry?
Yeah, so technological events
Every industry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're going to create trends. Almost every industry, there is some technological advancement that changes that industry over time. Some of them, move more quickly than others. But almost there's a progression over time, and it's keeping an eye on that over time that it prevents you from having to completely reinvent the wheel overnight. And technological event, they can go both ways. So you could have a technological trend that makes the work that you were doing. Sometimes a technological trend is that now the computers can do that work that you were doing, whereas before it required a human being, and you could get a higher price because you need to have a qualified individual doing that work. So that's the common one that we find with technological changes. But the technological changes often presents opportunities too, because sometimes you can acquire that software or that hardware before your customer does, and you can do the job quicker and better than you used to. You can tackle larger accounts, or you can automate one side of your industry, one part of your value proposition, and spend more time in another value proposition that you have in your business, so as not to be replaced by the computers, so to speak, where you're using the computers as a tool and not just focusing on the work that the computers can do by itself.
Do macroeconomic factors create trends in every industry?
Yeah, every single industry that we look at. If you were to the macroeconomic outlook of Alberta right now in 2019, it's not as good as it once was. We're not like in 2007 where we had restaurants that would close because they can't find anybody to work in the restaurant. We have a lot of macro economic items that are affecting industries, where we had a lot of people working in oil and gas, for example, and now those tradespeople working in oil and gas have come back and flood the residential or commercial construction market. So all of a sudden there's this oversupply of service providers. They may or may not be as astute to what is required in that type of construction, but nonetheless, that the macroeconomic trend is changing the available supply of tradespeople in Alberta, and that happens in every market. And it can flip the other way, where all of a sudden you're on a company's end, and all of a sudden people go back to oil and gas industries, and all of a sudden it's harder and harder to find those same tradespeople to execute the residential construction contracts. So those macroeconomic trends are going to have effects in every industry. And sometimes that's a little more of a specific example, but sometimes it's just we're in a recession. Things are tighter, things are tougher, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's going to affect it somewhat.
Can government policy create trends in an industry?
Yeah, and it's government policy on any level. I mean, the government changes the taxation of large companies and making they lower taxation and make it really attractive for big multinational conglomerates to set up shop. They take away from that labor pool of small businesses sometimes, and make it a little bit more difficult for the average small business owner. And sometimes it can be a straight up regulatory change. If we look at how the government has gone into what given legislation on how we deal with things like mortgages, who can qualify for what amount for mortgages. Well, that affects right down the line of people involved in the construction industry who are actually building those houses, and the sub-trades who are supporting the home builders. Government changes can affect the industry, and it comes on every level of government, federal and provincial and municipal. We've seen municipal initiatives, for example, to encourage the development of basement suites. So we talk about construction providers. They facilitate the the construction of basement suites, where, you know, in the city of Edmonton right now, they'll give $20,000 to be used to a construction of a basement suite. So we see contractors that are focused on the development of these basement suites. You know, maybe the macro economy is kind of detracting them, but if they, you know, dive heavily into this trend of doing basement suites and establish themselves as a leader, they can come out kind of unscathed. And that's just, you know, construction initiatives. We look at, there's a big initiative in terms of the dental industry, for example. A lot of people don't know this, but, you know, the fluoride put in the water in Edmonton, it's a municipal decision of what they're going to put in the water treatment plants. The fluoride component in Edmonton is higher. And what that means is people's teeth last longer. They have less cavities. They need less root canals. They need less extractions. The teeth are lasting longer. And dentists have told me that the same water in Calgary has less of a fluoride component. So people need more dental work. So sometimes the things that will create a change in an industry, it can be really difficult to see, but it can have an incredible effect of what that can do for the underlying industry as a whole.
Do the oversupply or undersupply of particular industries niches always change?
Yeah. So, we talk about pretend we have these basement developments, right? And there may be a bit of a need to do those basement developments. And a few years ago, it was about like doing these refacing. So the municipal government had this, the city of Edmonton had this plan where if you owned a business on certain streets, they wanted to make it look prettier, so they were going to pay for the bit of the construction costs. And then everybody jumped into doing that because there was a big, undersupply of people who could do these refacing projects, and all of a sudden everybody was going into the refacing projects, and then it became highly competitive, right? And now we see that there's an opportunity probably in some of these basement development projects, but these niches will change over time. So it's not just the industry as a whole that goes up and down. There's little components of these industries that are more attractive at some times and less attractive at other times. And it's just, people eventually flow to the least path of resistance. And once that gets flooded, you ought to be looking for the next trend to capitalize on it. So I think that's what we have here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, please hit that like and subscribe button so we continue to deliver you tips on how to beat the odds at business. And as always, we'd love to read any comments that you have below so we can respond back and use your input for future videos. Thanks very much.